Well, welcome to Madden and Benz, Unfiltered. Tim Benz and Mark Madden with you. And I thought we were going to start off talking about the NFL draft and Mark's big celebration for the win for Liverpool. We'll get to all that, but breaking news right before we started our live stream. Mike Sullivan out as head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Kyle Dubas will hold a press conference at noon to discuss further. It's a little murky. It's a little nebulous. I know what just happened within the half hour. What, if anything, have you been able to unearth?
Nothing. Not who the replacement might be. I do have a theory as to why it happened, and I don't know if Kyle will expand on this, but I would think Kyle, after kind of leaving the door open a crack last week for Sully to leave, when Kyle talked to the media, talking about how great a job he'd done, but not saying point blank he'd be back. I would imagine that Dubas and Sully talked, and Dubas said, you have to coach a different way. You're not trying to win the Stanley Cup because you can't. You're not just trying to squeak into the playoffs. We're trying to develop a championship caliber team, not next year, but within the next couple of years, and it's going to take time and a different method. And I think Sully probably balked at that. I think New York Rangers definitely want him. He has a connection there, having been an assistant there in the past. They feel they have a team ready to win, even though they absolutely do not. And I think he goes there. I think he just saw this as the time to leave after him and Dubas had that discussion. I think the two big questions coming out of this are obviously who replaces him. Everybody already talking about Rick Tocchet. Rick Tocchet ain't the kind of coach for the situation either. He's not the type of coach for a project. And I think he's going to stay in Vancouver or go to Philadelphia anyway. So I don't have a name to give you. This all just sprung up this morning. The other point of discussion is how Sid feel about this. And I don't think Sid is going to leave, but I think the door for that now is open just a crack because Sid's comfort zone, which he treasures so much, he fears change, has been violated. Now, if you're asking me what I think it's the proper move. I am grateful to Sully for all he did here. He led the team I've supported since I was a boy to 2 Stanley Cups, but he ain't won a playoff series since 2018. And I've often said he doesn't trust the young guys. I don't think Dubas trusts him to trust the young guys. So this is meaningful change, and it will definitely affect a dressing room that had gotten too comfortable with losing, with just being the Penguins.
Well, I want to get to a lot of what you said there. I'll pick up on the last point. And how many times did Dubas sort of make snide or backhanded or playful, however you wanted to interpret it, jabs when reporters are asking him during his postseason press conference, hey, so-and-so says they want to stay. So-and-so has said they'd like to be a part of this next year. And Dubas almost laughingly said, yeah, everybody wants to stay. And he didn't use this phrase, but he hinted at it. Maybe that's the problem. And maybe that extended to the coach too. So you might be onto something. And Mark, I think in your opening comments, what I want to believe to be true is what you said, which is if Dubas doesn't feel like Sullivan is the guy for the job, then he made this move. I don't know that's the case. I wonder if this is Sullivan going to him and saying, I've got an offer in New York with the Rangers to be their coach, or I've got an offer in New York to be the Islanders GM, which is another thing we should probably explore. And this is going to be what it takes to keep me. And the Penguins just said, no, thanks.
Well, I didn't know that Sully was considered for the Islanders GM. He'd be a bad GM.
You'd only get veterans that he already knows about their track record and are in their 30s.
He would be their version of Mike Tomlin as a GM. As a GM with whatever team, he would think we got to win right now. I'm not looking past the next game.
Well, he was their version of Mike Tomlin as a head coach here.
Mike Tomlin.
You know, I mean, that's one thing we can get to eventually, Mark. But I mean, when you use the phrase meaningful change, the first thing I thought of is what the Steelers have tried to say is change versus what the Penguins are at least doing here is change. This is something substantive with a coach who hasn't done anything since 2018.
It shows that the Penguins and Dubas have a plan. Whether that plan works or not, I do not know. But this is clearly about styles. This is clearly about method. This is clearly about moving forward as opposed to trying to scratch your way into the playoffs, which is what Tomlin always wants to do.
So when it comes to compensation for Sullivan, if he goes elsewhere, like this is where it matters. I didn't like when I saw.
Oh, I got the impression he's just leaving, that there won't be
Well,
compensation.
That's what I'm saying.
They just want to get out from under that contract. They can bring in a new coach now and not be paying Sully to not coach.
When I saw agreed to part ways, that put my antenna up because, well, if he's been fired, then okay, he's been fired. I don't know if there was like a pre-arranged agreement to this, but if he's picked up right away by someone else, like it matters if he's fired or not, Mark, I guess is what I'm saying. It can't just be a mutual parting of the ways.
Not to me, it doesn't.
Well, I mean, it should to the Penguins because if he's just going to the Rangers or the Islanders with time left on his contract, shouldn't they get something for him?
Not necessarily. They might see that as just a hail and farewell to a guy who did a great job here. I think that they just probably terminated the contract.
Yeah, I guess we'll find that out at noon.
If he was
but
going to get traded, that announcement would not have been made today like it was. The announcement would have been Sullivan traded to Rangers at some point.
Yeah, I would think. I would hate to see if he was a commodity between one of the two New York teams. They just said, okay, arrivederci, without getting anything back in an era.
I think you're way overanalyzing.
Am I? I mean, isn't that significant?
I think a guy like that, parting ways, who did so much for the team, I don't know, you have to hold his feet or another team's feet to the fire to let him do what he wants.
All right, so as you mentioned, you don't know who's going to be the next coach or if there's candidates or whatever. But
it will be somebody we've not heard of. At least, most people who follow hockey locally have not. I think it'll be a Spencer Carberry type. Like an AHL guy who's very highly regarded, like the Capitals did. Although Carberry, boy, he got instant results, didn't he?
He sure did. You don't think, and I imagine you don't want them to just promote Dan Quinn, right? I don't. That just feels like more of the same.
I want them to get rid of Dan Quinn. I think he's Mike Sullivan Jr. I expect he'll go where Sully goes.
How about falling under the umbrella, again, to get to another point that you addressed in your opening comments about the whole Sid Letang, especially Sid Malkin factor, about how the veterans feel about this?
Can't worry about how the veterans feel about it.
Well, especially if he partially wanted out, too. They got to keep that in mind. And I bet you that you'll hear that advanced strongly by Dubas, partially for that reason.
When one of the strongest brand names in the NHL hasn't won a playoff series since 2018, you can't worry about what the locker room thinks. You can't even worry that much anymore about what Sidney Crosby thinks. And I think this is a break in having done that perhaps to too big of an extent for a few years now.
For Crosby, I mean, I'm one, if I'm in his shoes, that actually welcomes this. I know he hates change and he won't feel that way, but if they are trying to win within the window that he has agreed to be here, then I think this actually gives them a better opportunity regardless of who it is, because my guess is if Sullivan had stayed, it would have remained the same.
Well, you want Sid to stay, and I think he will. And if he wants to see himself, in the remainder of his contract as leading the kids out of the wilderness, that would be realistic. Unless he plays till he's like 44, which I'm not ruling out either, and even that would be a long shot. But if he just plays these next 2 years, he's done winning Stanley Cups here. He won't win a playoff series here. I mean, that's just how it is. You can't just snap your fingers and rebuild in a second, especially when a lot of your rebuilding is based on developing goaltending, because you can't rush that timetable. It can be disastrous to do so.
I saw at least one tweet here. This is from our former colleague, Adam Crowley, who says that the team met with Sullivan yesterday. Sullivan had a list of non-negotiable demands. Dubas and FSG said thanks, but no thanks. Think there's anything to that?
I don't know what Crowley's sources are. I just got up to this news, so maybe.
I mean, that doesn't sound outrageous to me, especially with
we have Yoey on at 4:00. We'll find out.
I mean, that doesn't sound outrageous to me, especially outlining what we just outlined with the vacancy.
Well, not only that, I got to be honest, as much as Sullivan did here, if he had a list of non-negotiable demands after not winning a playoff series since 2018, he would, with me, if I'm Dubas, he would have got through about 2 demands and I would have shown him the door. That takes brass, my friend. to not have won a playoff series since 2018 and have a list of non-negotiable demands.
Well, I know that Sullivan acted like and thought he was bulletproof with FSG, and he probably was until he tried to play hardball with FSG. And then that's where FSG stops looking at people as being bulletproof. You know, when it comes to their money, that's where the tone changes when it comes to how much you're liked within those walls.
Tim, Jurgen Klopp was Liverpool's legendary manager for 9 years, left at the end of the season last year by mutual agreement. Liverpool just won the league yesterday with a new manager. Sometimes it's about meaningful change.
Well, I was going to ask you about that, and since we got there, let's sort of wrap up on this point before we get to some draft stuff and then get to some comments from Penguins fans. But because you've seen this before with Liverpool, and again, congratulations on the championship. I know that was big for you yesterday.
Yep. I'm hungover.
What about how they handled the Klopp situation might be affixed to how things are playing out here with Sullivan? Are you seeing similarities at all?
No, I think the situation where Klopp left was much more amicable. This strikes me as some degree of not amicable. I don't know about the Crowley report, whether it's true or not. This strikes me as some degree of unpleasant.
Yeah, and there was definitely a gulf between how Sullivan addressed his status and then how Dubas addressed his status a couple days later. Like, Sullivan made it sound like, I'm going to be back. And then when you heard Dubas phrase it the way he phrased it, like, we're going to try to accommodate that, or however the phrase was that he used, that was very different sounding.
Yeah, no question. And I think this is good. I think it's good for Sully. I think it's good to finally effing move forward. And if that means that some of the superstars leave, even Sid, you got to move forward. It's about the logo. It's about the franchise. It's about the team. It's not about old-timey stuff. It's not about nostalgia. And I talked to a Penguins insider this morning, in fact, right after we got on, I said, well, you got to keep those guys to sell tickets. And he goes, listen, the team is on a downhill slide. It's going to have tickets go downhill too. Keeping those guys will not avoid that. If you feel it's best for the team moving forward to get rid of one or all of those guys, to part company, as I recently heard it said, then that's not a bad thing necessarily.
We got comments pouring in on the Penguins. We'll get to those next. But first, Mark, let's get your reaction to the draft. I posted the Madden Monday podcast earlier today. It's been read and listened to quite a bit already. And a lot of people have heard your thoughts about Jack Sawyer, the fourth pick. That seemed to be your favorite pick of the bunch. Maybe not suggesting he's the best player of the bunch, just when and why they took him. And Howard, the other guy from Ohio State, the quarterback, was the least favorite pick that you made. Is that about right?
That's about right. I like Jack Sawyer because of the modern-day Warrior thing. Modern-day Warrior, mean stride. Yeah, the Will Howard pick, I think he's a fine quarterback. I just don't understand picking him if you're going to bring in your long-term guy in next year's draft. And my fear is that Will Howard does well enough in his limited exposure in practice, et cetera, with the Steelers, that he convinces them that maybe it could be him, and they don't draft that guy.
Yeah, they could have done that with Shedeur Sanders in the first or second round. Now they might just do it with some guy they took in the sixth round. Hey, Tom Brady was in the sixth round. I've heard and seen some of that already.
By the way, Tim, I just want to shout out some support to Jax Ulbrich, the son of the Atlanta defensive coordinator who made the prank call to Shedeur, telling him he'd been drafted by New Orleans.
The Ole Miss Jerky Boys, as they're being called now, yes.
I know he had to apologize, but I don't think he's sorry. and I just want to say, Jax, don't ever change. What you did was hilarious. Shedeur Sanders has been an ass his whole life. His dad has been an ass his whole life. You know, remember this, Tim? Where McCava at? Where McCava at?
Yes.
So we reap what we sow. The Bible says it. And Jax, don't forget, a lot of radio personalities, not me, but a lot have made a lot of money through phony phone calls, to which I can only conclude by saying, I see OJ. He looks tensus.
You know, it is funny that Shedeur is the only one that's being played as the big victim here, where who else got prank phone called? Tyler Warren, Penn State tight end, Kyle McCord, Syracuse.
Cooper DeJean last year.
Cooper DeJean last year. And
I wish I'd have made that call. I'd have done it better. I don't know what the kid said. I said, well, we were going to draft you, but you're a white cornerback.
And who would do that? So, of course, we're not going to do that. Now, you got to say with Jax, though, he kind of missed the punchline at the end, though. He kind of started getting a little giggly there when he just hung up the phone. He could have let it play out a little bit longer, don't you think?
These are kids, Tim. They're going to get better at it.
Got to stick the landing there a little bit more.
I don't think Jax actually made the call. I think he provided the number and a friend did the call.
Oh, wait, the friend was the one who was on the phone and Jax gave the number? Okay, all right.
Yeah. Now what makes this, like, I think the Harmon guy's the right pick, the defensive lineman. I find Sawyer to be interesting because now if they wanted, they won't. But if they wanted, they could play hardball with TJ Watt. Now they have 4 edge rushers. I'd say to TJ Watt, listen, you're under contract. We got all these young edge rushers. Let's see how you do. And if he wants to hold in, then trade him. That's what I would do. It's what they won't do.
Yeah, I saw that as TJ Watt insurance too. Some people saw it as TJ Watt insurance for injury. I saw it more for contract. And look, they had to go out and get themselves Preston Smith last year. You know, they get injuries at this position. And if you get injuries at this position with the way their defense operates, you're screwed. And I also, Mark, don't have a problem with the concept of their approach to defense changing, especially their approach to defensive playmaking changing, which is 100% reliant on 2 guys trying to beat the offensive tackle all the time. And then everything else is, well, let's see how it goes. That's not how the Eagles do it. The Eagles provide their pressure with a 4-man wave up front, moving the whole pocket back. It's not about how do our edge guys just beat the tackles. And if Sawyer's...
Well, yeah, but the stuff you're mentioning, like the Eagles do, I don't know if TJ Watt has any interest in that.
No, I don't think he does either. I think he has an interest in playing the way he plays, and I really do.
Once again, this is another team put in a decision. Do we just do what our star players want, or do we try to move forward?
I say that again, Mark. I missed that last part.
It's the Steelers. They're like the Penguins. Do we do what our star players want, or do we try to move forward?
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's why I think there's parallels for the Steelers to look at with the Pens here. And you know what? If the Pens actually do better, improve, make the playoffs, get something like you mentioned before the Caps did with Carberry, boy, is that going to put heat on the Steelers if they don't improve under Tomlin.
That's certainly what I'm hoping for, Tim.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, there's the guy that actually won a championship back-to-back in 16 and 17. They waited, about 7 years before they fired him. And here we are saying you can't touch the saintly Tomlin because he won a Super Bowl in 2010 and hasn't had a losing season.
Tim, you know what upsets me? Now I have to re-prepare the whole damn show today because Sully left. I mean, look at this. Look at these notes. Made them all last night. Note after note after note.
How many
damn thing about the Penguins replacing the friggin' coach?
How many of those are about Liverpool winning the championship?
Not that many. I mean, it's not a Liverpool show. We'll have a couple sound bites. How about Mo Salah scored the 4th goal to make it 4-1? Went to the stands, grabbed the fan's iPhone, and took a selfie of him and the fan in the middle of the game after scoring. A Spurs fan said, they're killing us 4-1 and doing goddamn meet and greets at the same time.
Well, at least nobody from Spurs slapped one of your fans like Puka Nakua's brother did in the UFL. Did you see that guy?
Yikes.
Oh, my God. All right, let's get
at least it gets people talking. You got Tommy Pham doing the hand motion to get suspended. Tim, sports suck. Sports aren't no good no more.
Well, the hand motion probably didn't last as long as the suspension. I think we can all be sure of that.
I just did a column on Shedeur for the Trib.
Mm-hmm.
I like what's that NBA guy, Steven Jackson?
Yeah.
Said nobody likes to see a confident black man. Is that implying that Cam Ward's not confident? And there were several other African Americans drafted, Tim. Do they all lack confidence? Is Shedeur the only proud black man? I mean, come on. This has nothing to do with race, and anyone who says so should be ashamed. Stephen A. Smith certainly implied that, but he should be ashamed in the first place because he has long since become self-parody.
Are Andrew Barry and Mike Tomlin confident? Right? I mean, like...
If I were Tomlin, I wouldn't be.
Well, I don't think, based on resume of late, either of them should be, but, that's the general manager who passed on him 5 times before he finally took him, and Tomlin passed on him 4 times before Shedeur was off the board. I don't understand why that isn't part of the equation. How racism comes into the conversation when those 2 guys were among others that had a need but decided to pass on him anyway.
All I know is we got to get Jack Sawyer on the show just so I can use Rush as the intro.
Let's get to Eric. who says we should all be grateful for Sully and what he accomplished here. Hopefully whoever replaces him isn't someone who works to ensure the Hayeses and Acharis of the league get their ice time every game.
Oh, I think them guys woke up to a brave new world.
His veteran respect mantra was my only rub
Well, and
against him.
Sully liked those guys because he was those guys when he played.
Jay says, the great irony, before I move on from that thought, Mark, the great irony of that is he won the cup in 16 because he had to trust younger guys. And they were his younger guys.
He also had worked with them in Wilkes. Hey, Tim, I see people saying he's arguably the greatest coach in Penguins history. I'll be blunt. He's not even close. He's not Badger. He's not Scotty. Herb was here for a very brief time, but Herb's a better coach. I could argue EJ. EJ was a superior bench coach. I mean, I'm not putting Sully down, but throwing all these bouquets in his wake after he didn't win a playoff series since 2018 seems a bit precious. The guy coached here, 9 years, right? And he only won playoff series in 3 of those years.
Eric says, I know you want him to be traded, but if you had to bet, will Erik Karlsson be a Penguin at the start of next year? And if traded, what's the most the Pens can get for him? I wonder if that's one of the alleged demands that Sullivan made. If you can't trade him, buy him out. And Dubas said no.
That's a good question. And I'll tell you what, the minute a coach started telling a GM about personnel matters, see ya. I think it's 50-50 Karlsson's back. If they do trade him, it won't bring much back at all. It'll just be to get rid of salary, and I think they'll have to retain some anyway.
Jay says, Penguins need to bring back Dan Bilesma. He got a rare shake the last time. Got a rare shake?
Is that a raw deal? I'm sure he means. Is that a joke?
I mean, like, he just lasted 1 year with Seattle.
In Penguins coaching history, who just got fired after 1 year in Seattle? Come on, get rid of this guy.
Let me get to a couple other ones. Wow, there's a lot here. Here's what Bill said. Unlike the Steelers with Tomlin, the Penguins and Sullivan knew when it was time to say time. Maybe they're just a little late getting to the party themselves.
That was like REO Speedwagon. Time to say goodbye.
Jay says, if not Bilesma, I'd be fine with Airy or Caulfield. You're just saying names that you recognize. This shouldn't be about names that you recognize and names you're familiar with.
Yeah, don't put this guy on ever again.
Bilesma says, or no, this is somebody else just ripping on that idea. Richard says, I don't think that this is a coincidence that the Rangers job opening and the Penguins moving forward, relying on developing and playing young talent on a regular basis, that Sullivan and the Pens decided to move on from each other. Again, I would like to.
I think Sullivan has always regarded the Rangers as one of the other teams he would be enthusiastic about working for.
Somebody in here asked if Torts would get an interview. My God, no.
If John Tortorella is the coach of this team next year, I will not go. I will not talk about them. I will not cover them. If John Tortorella would coach the Penguins, it would sever my lifelong relationship with them for however long he was the coach. Or plan B, I would make his life miserable at every press conference till we had severe words and he attacked me and was fired, or I was kicked out.
Or you owned the team.
Owns.
Robert says Klopp's time with FSG wasn't up. He could have coached at Liverpool for another 10 years. Well, those are different things. Those are very different things.
Well, he felt it was up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. The new guy did okay.
Listen, says Alex, Sully was a fake tough guy. Do you believe that?
I don't know what that means.
Well, I mean, I think what he's getting at is, he used to come off as hardcore and austere when he would do his press conferences with the media.
Well, I'm not going to denigrate Sully in the wake of his leaving. The facts speak for themselves. He won 2 cups, then didn't win a playoff series since 2018. I think he's a real good coach. I'm not sure he's as good as he thinks he is.
Well, I think what that guy might have been getting at is, for all the tough guy fronting that Sullivan did, how tough was he really on the veterans when they kept making mistakes and couldn't cover up for their own mistakes anymore?
Well, one thing is for sure. Erik Karlsson was a ticking time bomb the last 2 years, and he let him have carte blanche. That guy never missed a shift after a ton of egregious mistakes. In some ways, more than any player, Erik Karlsson exposed Sully.
Evan says, isn't Sawyer insurance for the usual Watt injuries since Herbig is too small for a full-time spot? Yeah, I mean, I think it's
That's
both.
a good call. It's a good call.
I've always liked Herbig. I warned about his size and his inability to be an edge setter against the run ever since he got here. He's been a very good pure pass rusher. He's good in spells. The longer he has to start, the more exposed I think he is. I think they realize that. And because Sawyer is supposedly really good in that regard, being able to be a good run stopper on the edge, that kind of dovetails with the point that I was making earlier. You know, they got to start thinking that way with their front guys more, not just having it be about our pass rush is constantly coming from two guys on the edge. You know, Hayward has gotten his sacks too, but Ogunjobi never got any, and that's part of the reason why Harmon is here too, I think. He had more pressures than anybody else in FBS play last year. By far, by the way.
Tim, by the way, where is the Dubas press conference at?
Cranberry.
Jesus. Why can't they ever have it at the arena?
I don't know what's going on there.
The arena.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. They always seem to be more comfortable up in Cranberry.
I don't know if I'm going. I'm just not that interested in anything.
Let's see here. Mike says...
I'll do what I do with most sports, Tim. I'll watch it on TV.
Mike says, at least the Pens did something the Steelers won't do, and that's fire the coach. Dan followed up by saying, yeah, and it's about time.
Well, to quote Kelso in that 70s show, when he picked Hyde and Jackie as the godparents to his baby and not Donna and Eric. Donna and Eric wanted to know why, because Hyde and Jackie kept breaking up, getting back together, breaking up, getting back together. And Kelso said, well, at least they're doing something.
Last one here. This is Brian who says, how long before someone in the national media suggests the Pens hire Babcock? Would you have the same reaction if it's Babcock with Tortorella?
No.
Babcock would be even worse when it comes to deal. Well, and actually, wait a minute. Was he the guy? Did Dubas fire Babcock? Was Babcock there when Dubas was there?
I think he was. But wait, no, Babs got fired from Columbus because of the thing where he wanted to look at his phones, right?
Yeah, I know. But before that, was Babcock out with Dubas as GM, and that's how Keefe got the job? Or am I skipping a generation there? I might be skipping a generation.
At this point, who cares?
Yeah, whatever. But
yeah,
either way.
Like, hey, one thing's for certain, too, to close this on a insightful note. This is Dubas' team now, period.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
and I
right.
think that's a good thing.
Mark, before we go, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. What'd you think about who got in, including like Warren Zevon and the White Stripes?
Warren Zevon's just this really overrated guy who had a couple good songs, was very creative, but he was like a critic's darling. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, there's a lot of people in rock and roll like that.
It was his only big hit, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he wrote Poor, Poor, Pitiful Me, which is a great song, but that was a Linda Ronstadt thing more than anything. White Stripes, I mean, Jack White is the latter-day Jimmy Page. So I have no problem with that. Soundgarden, I guess, deserves it. Bad Company definitely deserves it. Should have been in years ago.
I have to say Warren Zevon, Lawyers, Guns, and Money also has to be up there.
Oh, yeah, that's a good song. I mean, I'm not anti-Warren Zevon. By all accounts, he was just a jerk, too.
Oh, was he? I didn't hear that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, by all accounts.
I didn't think Excitable Boy, honestly, was all that great of a song. A lot of people like that one from him as a hit.
I thought the lyrics were good.
Mr. Bad Example was a great song. I think that might be my favorite.
Don't you think a lot of his songs sounded samey with like those big piano chords? Bam, 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 bam.
Well, Mr. Bad Example is some of those, especially at the outset of it.
Don't get me wrong, that's how he plays.
I just want to go to the Chinese restaurant in the Werewolves of London. Was it Li Hu Fuchs or something like that? How do you say it?
I just want to lay my head on the railroad track waiting for the double E.
Well, that's might be
sure what I want to do. Tim, my last goal was accomplished yesterday at approximately 1:28 p.m. our time.
Well, tune in to Mark at approximately 2:59 p.m. today and get everything you need to get. There's lots more information that'll come out between now and when Mark's show starts.
How dare the Penguins, the draft, and the Sanders family upstaged Liverpool winning the league? But the bottom line is, Tim, they didn't.
Mark's on at 3. I'll have a column up tomorrow for Breakfast with Benz on the Mike Sullivan firing, so make sure you read that. Mark's Shedeur Sanders column is either up now or going up tomorrow. I don't know if it's going up.
I sent it. Who knows, Tim? I sent it just recently, like literally minutes before. When I made that decision that every journalist does, a bigger story broke that I should write about immediately, but this column's already done.
Check out the story put up about Ava or two. Francois Leroux's daughter from South Fayette is making her big comeback after that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good for her. Good for Frankie. Ain't many guys more solid than Frankie. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, so read that column. It's a good story. She's coming back and playing for Robert Morris. And I didn't hear how the court proceedings went today, but hopefully they went the way that the Leroux family wanted them to. Rooting for them and rooting for her specifically. Mark and I are back next Monday. Thanks for watching, everybody, on a breaking news day here on Madden and Benz Unfiltered.